to the nation this morning. He says police have arrested 4,000 suspects for illegal mining-related crimes since last year, and in just 4 months this year, over 7,000 suspects involved in illegal mining were arrested for contravening immigration regulations. Ntebu Mukowa reports.
Government has vowed to intensify the fight against illegal mining, and President Ramaphosa has authorized the deployment of over 3,000 soldiers for 6 months to help the police in their operations, something Police Minister Bheki Cele says will help deal decisively with these armed illegal miners.
They resist and they are armed. So these operations is not just to arrest them when you see them. It's to go where they are and make sure that they are flushed out of the system of doing so.
The president says there are over 6,000 abandoned mines in South Africa. He has since congratulated police for their successes in dealing with these crimes. Ntebu Mukobo for SABC News.
A 54-year-old man has been arrested for the murder of a 44-year-old man at a tavern at Mokomene, the Khomong village outside Morebeng in Limpopo. The suspect allegedly assaulted the victim and later handed himself over to the police. Limpopo police spokesperson Hlulani Mashaba says the suspect is expected to appear before the Morebeng Magistrates Court today. Mashaba says the deceased has been identified as Silas Makuba Racheku.
A 54-year-old male suspect tracked down the deceased and found him at a certain tavern at Mokomene, the Khomong village, and drove away with him in a white motor vehicle to an unknown place. The suspect later on the same night reported the same matter to the police, that he assaulted the victim whom he suspected of stealing his tires. It is reported that upon arrival of the police at the crime scene, they discovered his lifeless body, brutally assaulted, bleeding from his nose and mouth with broken legs. The paramedics upon arrival certified the deceased dead.
Civil rights organizations in Lusikisiki in the Eastern Cape have called on the presidency to declare a state of emergency in the small town and the surrounding villages. This comes after a series of murders mainly directed at educators, women and children in the area. The region is allegedly populated with drugs and criminal activities that continue to terrorize the communities. The latest incident is the brutal killing of Sobaba High School female teacher on Friday. Sobaba High School principal Veliwe Fuzani says teachers, learners and the whole community is traumatized.
The learners were crying tears yesterday and the parents were crying tears yesterday. And it's worse when you can notice that the car is in Flagstaff, then the body of the deceased is in Chachewunsina. Those are different places. So we are so scared. I don't want to lie.
Meanwhile, Director of Lusikisiki Fight Against Gender-Based Violence, Kwalo Mathandabuzo, has urged the presidency to declare a curfew in Lusikisiki for 3 months or more.
We are saying here as the community, no, this should be the last in terms of the killings in Lusikisiki, the murders. We are also saying that how we would like that curfew or a state of emergency is declared by the Honorable President, so that from the evening, the period that will be determined by the Cabinet, at least for a period of not less than 3 months, we are under the curfew, so that only the emergency services operate at night and the people that are looking for those and other services that need to be done.
Tourism Business Council of South Africa CEO Chiviwa Chibenga has again denied claims that comedian Trevor Noah has received over 30 million rand for a new tourism advertisement. It is rumored that Trevor Noah was paid 33 million rand to appear in a 5-minute advert featuring rhinos to promote the country. Chibenga says the amount cannot be disclosed as it is a private contractual matter.
It's a very small amount of money, that he charges, actually less than what he usually charges for the work that he does, for other countries. So it's a contractual matter. If we're going to say he charges X amount of money, the Swiss will come and say, well, but he did this for more money or less money. And remember, this is a private sector matter, and we are not using any state funds, so we are not duty bound to report to Parliament or anybody else. The matter is between us and him.
And finally, Kenya is beginning an ambitious plan to plant 15 billion trees within the next decade to help combat climate change. Today has been declared a public holiday to mark the beginning of the campaign. The BBC's Ensoi reports.
The aim is to get every Kenyan to plant at least 2 trees and continue to grow more every rainy season. The government says about 150 million seedlings are available in public nurseries across the country. An internet application will be used to track progress. trees. The government has, however, been criticized for failing to tame illegal logging in forests. The effects of climate change on the country have been severe, so the tree planting initiative will likely receive support across the political divide and in the private sector.
Recapping a top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the government's fight against illegal mining is yielding positive results. He addressed the matter in his weekly letter to the nation this morning. Your headlines at 10:30 with N. Musa for SAFM News. My name is Luyanda Maume and I'm out.
Here, there and everywhere. SAFM 106.6 FM in Bloemfontein. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's 8 after 10 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of the Talking Point this morning. So coming up in this hour, we'll be getting an academic perspective on the corruption in this country, but most importantly, the efforts to fight corruption and why it is we're not seeing the kind of progress that really most of us would want to see in order to ensure that we do get back onto the right track. Thank you for the conversations in the first hour of the show. To all of you that called in, that sent you messages and your WhatsApp voice notes, we really appreciate it. Speaking of which, I'll take some of your voice notes from the first hour and then we'll get into our conversation.
Good morning, SAFM. Could you kindly investigate as to what's happening in Maletiapofun? Since the inauguration of a mayor who cannot read or write, we are suffering the rolling blackout. Please find out as to what is taking place there, because even when the Minister of the Electricity would say there's no a rolling blackout, in Maletiapofun there's a severe load shedding, which takes hours. Please find out or call the Minister of Electricity so that we can ask him some questions. Please. Matibang, thank you.
Good morning, Cathy. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but are you saying that that woman who was attacked at the weekend was left by those around her, they just looked on? Because I thought she survived precisely because people intervened. That is why the very perpetrator himself is in hospital, because then people took the law unto themselves.
Good morning, SAFM. I trust you are all well. I saw 2 videos of stabbing over this past weekend. That one of a mine worker and also of that lady, student. It is clear that we are not only faced with a gender-based violence, but we are faced with a violence in South Africa. The sooner we realize that, the better. Because now we'll be looking at one side, but let us look at both sides. But why are we becoming the violent country? Why are we becoming the cruel country? Thank you very much.
Good morning, Cathy. This is the grumpy old man from Limpopo, Sibayeng Solomondale. Cathy, I would like to say to men who are desperate, who feel that they want to do something that they ought not to do, to really call this toll-free number 0800 150 150 0800 150 150. This number is a toll-free number that deals with gender-based violence. It is controlled by no excuse for GBV. Father a nation. Please, gentlemen, come on board. We will assist. It is open 24 hours. Thank you.
Cathy, good morning, good morning, good morning. My heart goes to Patrick as well. His experience is not pleasant at all. Cathy, I'm talking about government supply or this thing called CSD. Do you know, I am an electrician entrepreneur. I left my job purposefully so 2.5 years ago. But what I have experienced is that I don't get jobs since then, only 2. But every day when you go to the internet cafe, you see people filling up a request for quotation, many people getting business. I don't know how this thing of CSD selects people to provide supplies. I am really concerned about that it seems it favors others and some not. Leviticus from Mafikeng. Thank you, Cathy.
Good morning, Cathy. As we do things as parents, our children learn and become what we do. That's the issue of that's the result of GBV, because the violence on its own starts in the family, within the family. If the father is abusing the mother in front of the children, the boy child will learn that it's actually men who are in control. It's actually us as men who needs to stop this. As parents and grandparents, we need to stand up as a society and say no to GBV. And to women and men, let's learn to respect each other as lovers. If it doesn't work, let's move aside. Brandma by Project Land.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk. Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
Well, last week we saw the National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council take place, and it was a council that was established to advise the president on how to deal with corruption. A lot was said at that particular summit, but I think the crux of it really was that there was a view shared that if South Africans, if all of us, don't start to take a strong stand or stance against corruption, then it's only going to continue. Many people were angered by those comments because, well, they say, we are not the ones that are doing corruption in this country. If anything, government should be looking to itself and cleaning itself out in order to fully deal with corruption. Let's listen to what the Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, had to say on this issue.
When you remember the amounts that the Commission has revealed were stolen, you're bound to ask yourself the question, how did this happen? These people were moving from one SOE to another, doing the same thing. Why did we not stop them? Leave out others that we know had no interest in stopping them. But as a country, as a people, did we do enough ourselves to stop this? For 5 years, 6 years, it was happening. That's a question that is very important when we talk about active citizenry that has been referred to before. Because we need to look at what might need to be done in the future in order to make sure that we never find ourselves in this kind of situation again. And in this regard, I want to thank the President for sharing with all of us as much information as he has shared with regard to what has been done. But I also want to thank him for his acknowledgement of the work of the Commission. But I also want to refer to what he said when he said the Commission got established because the people of South Africa demanded it. Not only that, when the Commission was going on, and indeed there were attacks on the Commission, it was the people of South Africa, it was the NGOs, it was the civic organizations, it was some political parties who kept us going, because at times it was not easy.
All right, so those were some of the reflections of Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. Let me invite onto the show this morning Professor Alex van der Heever, Chair in the field of Social Security Systems Administration and Management Studies at the Wits School of Governance. Prof, good morning to you. Thanks for your time.
Good morning.
Dr. Levin Doe is a political analyst based at the Tshwane University of Technology. Dr. Doe, good morning.
Good morning to you, Cathy. Good morning to the listeners.
And Sandile Swana is a political analyst and lecturer at Wits Business School. Mr. Swana, good morning.
Morning.
All right. Thank you all for making time to be part of this conversation. Interestingly enough, we heard there from Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, but at the same event last week, the president, of course, also shared his own reflections. And part of what he said is that if corruption is not arrested, the greatest damage will be on the services that are not delivered, it won't be on the services not delivered, but the greatest damage will be to the belief in democracy itself. He also went on to call on South Africans to help end corruption. And this is where then I think we should begin the conversation. Whose responsibility is it to end corruption? Mr. Swana, let me begin with you.
Thank you so much, and I'm grateful for the company of my learned colleagues here. Now, let me then say this. The corruption basically deals with people in the main who pursue their interests in an unlawful manner and also in an immoral manner. So to the extent that corruption involves illegal activity, illegal certainly in South Africa, corruption is legislated clearly in South Africa. Therefore, the primary duty of the state to ensure that there is fair dealing amongst citizens, it continues to be absolutely the duty of the state that my rights and my properties are not violated by another person to the point that I have to take the law into myself. Because that is the direction in which corruption takes us. It actually eliminates fair dealing. And once you enter the realm of you are outside the realm of fair dealing, then you are going to start shooting each other. So the state needs to make sure that in all spheres of life, there is fair dealing. It is the duty of the state, first and foremost.
Prof. van der Heever, let me bring you in here. Whose job is it to end corruption?
Well, it's essentially society's responsibility, but it is the responsibility of government to implement what is required to avoid and prevent corruption. And I distinguish between sort of two broad types of corruption, sort of what I'd call bottom-up corruption, which is when ordinary people violate the laws and the rules of their organizations as well as the laws of the country, and top-down corruption, where you have people in positions of power who are able to capture the institutions of the state and abuse them. And these are two quite different forms and require two quite different strategies to deal with. The top-down corruption is the most pernicious because it essentially allows for parts of the state to become, or government to become, parasitic on society. And now you've got a problem there in that a conflict of interest emerges in that the very actor that is meant to eliminate corruption is the very actor who is most prevalent in perpetuating it and the worst form of it. And the only way that it can be eliminated is to close the holes that allow for the institutional capture of state organizations, which channel large amounts of money and patronage out of the state into the hands of private individuals who are very much tied into the relevant political parties who are responsible for maintaining the parasitic relationship. So this is really where the problem lies. And I really don't accept what the president has said, that this is really just up to citizens. I don't know what he means by the citizens coming forward and taking action. Essentially, this is a political problem. We have to deal with a state that is unwilling to deal with top-down corruption. And that is where citizenry does have a role. But when you start to make it the responsibility of whistleblowers within a system where all the cards are stacked against you, and you'll be murdered or you'll be fired and silenced if you attempt to take action against essentially powerful entities and cabals that are operating within the state, it is very difficult for citizens to do anything. The means by which society protects itself from corruption is through the design of systems that can avoid corruption and eliminate it. And this is unfortunately the problem now, in that the president has failed to implement any kind of structural change within the way in which our corporate governance structures of our state institutions and our administrations are designed and operated to prevent the deployment of people from a political party into the state. And that is the means by which the state is persistently and continuously captured at the moment, and how corrupt syndicates can be very quickly established through state structures. So this is where I think the fact is that government has failed. Let's say at the political level, the current administration says one thing and does another. And I'll just use one example, which raises enormous concerns, in that in the sort of the General Intelligence Laws Amendment Bill, government has basically said that now it must investigate NGOs and do security assessments of the people running them, which is clearly intended to attack civil society. And it's also going to set up a structure in which they can approve internally surveillance of any citizen in South Africa, anybody, with an appointed judge. That's not the judiciary, that's somebody who's appointed, who would vet whether or not they should be able to essentially spy on everything you're doing. Now, that, on the one hand, the president says one thing, and on the other hand, this is a law that his administration is taking forward. And this is only one of a raft of pieces of legislation that are intended to silence society's critique of government.
Dr. Ndo?
Thank you, Cathy. I fully agree with my learned colleagues. But at the same time, we've got a huge challenge of corruption, and I think that is why we're discussing it. And on the part of government, there is a lot that, in my view, government has actually done, which relates to the laws, regulations that government has to create in order for people to know and understand how they're supposed to conduct themselves, either as public servants or whether they're outside government, and as just individuals. In South Africa, you have got code of conduct, you've got administrative rules and regulations, you have got issues that relate to the whistleblowers and the protection thereof. You have got auditors, you have got monitoring and evaluation systems, you have each department has got its own in-house set of rules and regulations that are supposed to be followed. And every citizen in South Africa has a much better idea of what is supposed to be done in order to prevent any form of corrupt activity. What we appears to be having a challenge, in my view, would be at a degree in which all of us as ordinary citizens will start saying, in whatever position that I occupy, I should not be an active participant. Actually, I should not be a participant in corrupt activities. Because in terms of what we're supposed to do or not do, all of us are aware that of how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. Another area, in my view, that is a challenge is that even though we say the state has a main responsibility to ensure that corruption is to be fought against and develop all these rules and institutions to fight corruption, you have got a clear element of the failure on the part of government, especially when it comes to the implementation the actual people who must fight corruption: your police, your investigators, your NPA, and the judiciary. Because most instances of corruption, even though they'll give you spells that there are 3,400 cases that have gone through for prosecution, there's still a lot of other corrupt activities that are taking place. But if as citizens are not willing to play our role and assist government in the fight against corruption, unfortunately we might not be going anywhere. And remember, most corrupt activities are happening behind closed doors, in darkness, and these people are not seen. And that is what they will actually do, knowing that they won't get arrested. So it is not only about the written laws that government has initiated in having. It is also about our natural laws, that as a citizen I should be able to stand up and say, whatever I'm doing, whether the door is closed, it is wrong, it does not benefit service delivery, it is against everything else that all South Africans want to see progress, want to see. And even though the door is closed and I'm being persuaded to participate, I should therefore be able to say no. My sense is that both government and ordinary citizens have got a role to play in ensuring that we're able to fight against corruption in South Africa.
Do you believe that as a country we are having honest conversations about why corruption is not uprooted? And there's some that are arguing, including just on the messages that the listeners are sending through, that, corruption is one of those evils that, societies will never be able to get rid of. But really it's down to how it is controlled and managed. But do you believe that we're having honest conversations around why it is that corruption remains so endemic in our society? And I say this because we had a period when the Zondo Commission of Inquiry was still underway, where there was a wave of outrage, protest against corruption. There were campaigns against corruption, and it clearly was something that was moving through society. As we speak today, corruption has not ended, but the momentum around it, the conversations around it, have changed quite significantly. And I would like to hear from all of you around why you think that is the case, number one. Number two, is there still a fervency to call a spade a spade rather, when it comes to why corruption remains endemic and the role that that plays and intersects with politics? Because it seems to me that the conversation around that has also changed. We no longer talk about the relationships, the corrupt relationships that politicians have with themselves and with business that enables this corruption, at least as we see it, especially from a top-down approach, as Alex has described it. We'll continue the conversation shortly. I'll get my guests to weigh in on that particular perspective. It's now time for the latest headlines.
Good morning. In the headlines, police in KwaZulu-Natal have launched a manhunt for suspects who allegedly shot and killed 5 people and injured 1 at different houses in an informal settlement in Umlazi in the south of Durban last night. President Cyril Ramaphosa says government's fight against illegal mining is yielding positive results. He addressed the matter in his weekly letter to the nation this morning. And a doctor at the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City says more than 30 babies need to be moved from the site to Egypt if they are going to survive because of the worsening conditions at the facility. I'll have details on these and other stories at 11.
The rand is currently trading at 18 rand 65 to the dollar, 22 rand 82 to the pound, and 19 rand 94 to the euro. Markets in Asia ended mixed, the JSE higher in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe also slightly up this hour. Gold is trading at $1,937, platinum $845 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $80.67 a barrel.
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as pastry chef Sahil Siegabin bakes up a festival of Diwali treats.
And I hope you have a blessed one.
Rudy Page passes his rugby passions onto his family.
I'm beyond proud of my dad. My dad played for my country.
And Loyiso Gijana put his all into music.
That's what has communicated with people, is because I'm writing from my heart.
That's the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday morning at 9 on S3.
Have you ever noticed how unique the rugby ball is?
You should check out Head High.
The rise of junior rugby stars Mana and Tai.
Vince is not just their stepfather, he's their coach.
Catch the brothers' dream of the black jersey. Head High every Sunday at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com.
Rugby Drama Galore.
Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the
The award-winning SAFM playwriting competition is back.
Piece of good news for writers out there.
SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound.
Dr. Jerry Mufokeng Bamaketa is head judge of the competition.
And you ask the question, who? And I want to say everybody, young, old, black, white.
For a chance to win one of 3 large cash prizes. For more information, visit safm.co.za. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're looking at the state of corruption in the country and getting an academic perspective. We're speaking mostly to academics on this issue this morning. I'll take your calls in about the next 6 minutes or so. Joining us for this conversation has been Professor Alex van der Heever. He's with the Wits School of Governance. Dr. Levi Ndo, who is a political analyst at the Tshwane University of Technology, and Sandile Swana, who is a political analyst and lecturer at Wits Business School. So, Sandile, I'm going to come to you, and if you can just reflect on what I was asking before we went to news, this change in our approach to corruption as a country, but especially the conversations that we're having around corruption.
Thank you so much, Cathy. Let me say this, that your question was whether the conversation is honest and direct about corruption. I think that the conversations are not honest in some specific respects. The first respect is that we've got to be asking the question as to why was Mandela so panicked in 1995? In August 1995, about the level of corruption in South Africa. When he addressed the anti-corruption summit in 1990, hardly a year after taking power in South Africa. It was just over a year after taking power in South Africa. He said the fact that a serious crime is committed in South Africa every 17 seconds cannot improve investor confidence. And no matter what successes we register in other spheres, the fact that 18 billion rands of fraud is under investigation does not bode well for our economy. Mandela was totally panicked by corruption in 1995. Thabo Mbeki, Cyril Ramaphosa, and others, the younger generation of leaders, are now pretending as if this issue is a new issue. Many of us are behaving as if this is a new issue, that we have not built up credible priorities and a system of actually eradicating the corruption. So So our approach to the topic that makes us dishonest about it is that we have not kept an open, ongoing ledger to say, from 1995, what have we been doing? Instead, what has actually happened, we've had a head of the police, such as Jackie Silebi, Interpol, going to jail for corruption. We've had the heads, I think his name was Kenya or somebody like that, head of the organized crime and anti-drug unit in Cape Town, being shot dead with the assistance of his colleagues in the police force. So and the many generals of the police and senior police officers being charged. So the second level of dishonesty is on the relationship of politicians with money and political parties with money. From the days of Nelson Mandela, the funding of political parties has been dishonest. You will remember that Olomisa was discontinued from the ruling party for revealing certain funding by Saul Kesner and others. And Mandela was directly involved in that. Mbeki was involved in that, and Professor Patrick Bond has documented that publicly. That aspect of the political funding of political parties with honesty and transparency is still a problem. People try to get the records of the CR17, the CR17 funds and many other related monies that funded the ANC conference in 2017 from all sides of the factions of the ANC was highly, highly criminal, and it signaled that the state is a mafia state. So the last thing I will say is that the discussions, for instance, I listened from start to finish to the last speech of the president on this matter last week that he made. The problem that I have is that he talks about achievements and what have you and what has been done. Now, my problem is that we don't have a baseline from which we're moving. You just tell us that a lot has been done. So even a student who gets 10% in an exam has done something, but the fact of the matter is that he has failed. Ramaphosa has been next to this issue of corruption since 1995, and he's now the president today. He has been even a deputy president before. Still, we are still wandering and meandering, and the issue is not being saying, which part of the corruption are we solving? Are we going to make sure that the backlog of the Auditor General is cleared and cleared completely, that there are no more remaining findings? Which part of the corruption are we finding? Are we going to say the people who are doing business, who have personal numbers, are employees of the state, are doing business with the state, those people are actually removed from the state completely, and that habit of doing business with the state is ended? If we talk about corruption and it's not pointed exactly what it is that we're talking about and what are we going to solve in which time frame, using what resources, then we're joking. The last thing I'll say is that in my area where I live, in Mulderstream, the police station has been underfunded for as long as I know. It's still underfunded. I was talking 2 weeks ago with the station commander, a brand new station commander, and the police station is underfunded. So how are you going to end crime and corruption when the police are underfunded and some of the police are members of criminal syndicates? Let me pause.
All right. Thanks for that view, Sandile. Alex, let me come to you.
Well, so if we look at this period now of the current president, and the assumption was that he was going to do something about the systemic corruption, the top-down corruption. What would have been required is institutional changes. It changes the powers of members of the executive to influence organizations of state. It's important to note in the case of state-owned enterprises is that theoretically they kind of follow in some sort of notional sense the Companies Act, in that you have the so-called investor, the majority investor who appoints the majority of the board, and in this case it would be the state, and it is essentially embodied in a single person, one minister, and they effectively appoint the board at their discretion, and that board can appoint the chief executive officer. So essentially that means that instead of dispersing power, which is what you do in the normal company structure, public companies, where you're attempting to aggregate the interests of shareholders, and in particular minority shareholders, and protect their interests in an organization, you don't concentrate the power in the hands of the people, of the managers of that organization. What you do is you disperse the power and you ensure that there is proper accountability for the performance of that organization. We do the opposite in South Africa, and it's the reason every single one of our state organizations has collapsed. So it's important to note that we might see lots of things that go wrong in South Africa, but right now we've probably lost about a third of our GDP because of the collapse of key public institutions. And that has deepened poverty and inequality in South Africa. And it also undermines, as correctly as the president has stated, the risk that democracy itself might fail. But what we see is a government and an administration in place who is working toward the very destruction of democratic principles. Because the moment you have a party controlling state institutions, you don't have a democracy. You have an organization that operates in the interests of its own members who have captured that organization. That's what we have, and we need to get real about that. So I don't think that the conversation has necessarily changed. What's happened is every single day, you're seeing major areas of corruption revealed in the press, and it is potentially the tip of the iceberg. So when you look at the levels of irregular expenditure across municipalities, across provincial governments and key national departments and key state-owned enterprises, this is in the billions and billions that it's happening. And this is money being channeled out to fake companies that are being set up and put on company procurement systems, and tenders being allocated where no delivery is expected. And this is happening hand over fist throughout South Africa. And when you see a road failing, when you see a police station having members that don't do any police work, when you have a railway system that can't actually, a logistics system that can't transport goods and services to our harbors and kills our exports, when we see electricity fail so that we lose jobs as small businesses and companies who can't afford solar collapse, when we see all of that, it's all because of this top-down structural corruption that can only be addressed by changing key structures in the state.
All right.
Now, my concern at this point is that there is an issue about where the public focus has to be. It has to be on these structures. It's not going to be on the individuals. And what the attempt has been is to kind of externalize this problem and say it's kind of corruption has kind of landed on us from out of space. Actually, and it's really just a bunch of bad actors who are doing bad things. It's not. It's structural.
All right.
And the only way we change it is to change the structures of the state and disconnect political appointments from the state as one of the key measures.
Dr. Ndo, let me get your perspective before I bring in the views of our listeners on the line.
Indeed, Cathy, there has been a lot of discussions in the public space about corruption. What we don't know it's what politicians are discussing behind closed doors. When they come to the public or when they make public pronouncements, they would always be talking about the different strategies that they have to use to fight against corruption, and they'll always portray an element of being very much worried about corruption and corrupt activities. You need political parties who are able to stand firm in the fight against corruption. You need political parties that will be able to go to the different municipalities where there are many activities of corruption, to go and ensure that people that are involved in this corruption are actually being dealt with. You also need a very strong bureaucracy that will be able to fight against systematic corruption, which appears to be very much entrenched. There is sufficient proof that even though we're very much worried about politicians themselves, you have got administrators who are involved with corrupt activities on a daily basis. As we speak now, there are a lot of people, drivers in particular, who have already paid a bribe to a traffic officer on the road today. There are a lot of people who have already paid a bribe to get driver's licenses and licenses as we speak today. There are a lot of people who might be making or who have paid bribe in order to get some documentations at Home Affairs. So it's actually happening, And you need the state that should be able to break the spine of the corruption channel in South Africa. Each time when we listen to Minister Cele speaking about corrupt activities, he would constantly complain about the level in which they are under-resourced in terms of human resource. He'll keep saying that I've got very few police personnel, and that's why some of the issues are actually getting out of hand. Therefore, you need to have the state that is going to employ capable and people that have got a very positive mindset in the fight against corruption.
All right.
The question would be, are our police ready, or is our police force ready to be able to deal with these corrupt activities? And I would say they don't appear to be ready.
All right. Thanks for that view. Ultimately, the question of capacity is central to it, right? Because if people get arrested, they need to go through a process of the criminal justice system. And if that process seemingly is found wanting and, criminals are left off the hook, then, like with all other crime, corruption continues. Khotso, you're out in Midrand. Good morning.
Good morning, Sister Cathy.
Yes.
And your guests and all of your guests there. Yeah, look, on some of the issues, I think your professors and your scholars have covered them. But what I also want the prof from Faith to touch on, then the others will touch on the other issue. We must touch on the issue of the Chief Justice Zondo. Chief Justice Zondo was sharing a platform with a man who's also under serious cloud of maladministration and corruption. What I'm saying I'm saying this because
and who's that man, Khotso?
It's no one other than the state president. No one other than the state president. Look, we have serious issues to do with Phala Phala. We have serious issues to do with state-owned enterprises, which have all of them just imploded and collapsed in the face of the sitting government, whereby Brazil and his friends, the Stellenbosch mafias and everybody, whoever you like, in the private sector, they are doing as they wish within the SOEs. But what I want the prof to touch on firstly is the issue whereby you are having interviews which are being conducted by the JSC. The JSC says out of the 4, here is our number 1 and our number 2. But instead, after the recommendation, the president goes there and chooses number 4 on its own there, before we can start and say we are having a chief justice Zondo. Then by its nature, we are having a corrupt chief justice.
All right.
Because number 1, they've chosen number 4 instead of number 1.
All
but
right,
the issue which let me run on this one.
Very quickly, Khotso. We've got so many listeners on the line. Hurry up.
Okay. The other issue is to do with the with the issue of the weak judiciary or the corrupt judiciary. What I'm saying is, I'm talking about the whereby you're having Afrofora. If they lose case within the council-in municipalities, they run quickly to the court, knowing that the court on its own, they are weak and highly corrupt. Thank you.
All right, Khotso. Khotso out in Midrand. Brian in Cape Town, please keep it short and sweet for me. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, and to your listeners, I will, because most of the points I wanted to raise has already been mentioned. But I just want to emphasize on one point. Your one panelist mentioned that the state it's a mafia state. I agree 100%. The point I can make now is that a point I've already made many times, that the capitalist system has been born with corruption and racism and all these social ills. But the public, we as the public can do something. At this point, we can do something about it. A very real opportunity exists now in that an alliance has been formed of the opposition And I would normally wouldn't encourage people to vote, but I think we should take the opportunity of voting for this alliance to get these corrupt mafia out of government. This government cannot solve the problem because it is the problem. The Ramaphosa, for example, is tainted in corruption. Not only with Paula, but if you go back soon after Codesa, he was involved in many of these companies where he was appointed onto the board through corrupt manner, like Johnny and
All right, Brian.
And let me just end off. It is imperative that we keep this issue of state capture and corruption alive, because the intention of this government is to sweep it under the carpet.
Thanks for that view. Also in Cape Town, Mr. Khan, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Cathy. Cathy, it is very, very sad. The height of police corruption and the blind eyes being turned on police corruption. You know, Cathy, I've been hijacked by policemen. I've been robbed of my car by policemen. I've been threatened by them with incarceration, should they not get what they want. I have been toy-toying in town twice by accident. While I was toy-toying the opening of Parliament, I bumped into Betty Taylor. He wanted to know what this is about, and I told him what it was about. He made it clear that he would see to my what was happening, my old deals that was happening to me. The first time I bumped into him by accident was at the ANC's office in Adley Street. He instructed Mr. Jacobs, Faiz Jacobs, to schedule a meeting after the meeting that he would have with the branch, and nothing came of it. The second time I bumped into him, I made sure that he put it on paper, and I got that piece of paper, Cathy. I wanted him to put it on paper so that I can show people or the authorities that this man is also the Minister of Police. Imagine the Minister of Police turning a blind eye to these serious crimes that his members is doing to people. Man.
All right.
This is not on. You know what, Cathy? I have been told that while laying a charge of theft at my place by two constables that nothing is going to happen to this matter. I've been turned away from the police station for certify my ID copy. They would not even want me to do that. I've been told by constables, don't lay a charge here. We don't want to help you.
All right.
Don't come here to this police station. I have been violated by SAPS. I've lost my business by these two members, SAPS members, and I have proof of everything I am telling you.
All right, Mr. Khan. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there with you, Mr. Khan. But I'll put you back to my producer level so that he can get more details of what you're saying happened to you. The point of it, though, is that when you have sought help from the system, you simply have not been able to get it. Let me come back to my guests, and we're getting ready to close the conversation up. Quickly, how an hour flies. So I'm going to ask that. All of the panelists, if you can please keep your reflections then very brief for me. I'll give you about 2 minutes each to reflect on what has been raised by our listeners. Mr. Swana, let me begin with you. Hello, Sandile.
Yes, I'm here, Sis Cathy. I'm saying that the listeners are raising concerns we're aware of, including this one about the police. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Yes. I'm saying the listeners are raising valid concerns, including concerns about the police. There is a need across the board for a review of the people who work for the state as to their suitability, including those who are doing commercial transactions with the state, to be removed from the state, including those who are implicated in crime and corruption, to be removed from the state as soon as possible, including politicians and cabinet ministers and mayors and councillors who are involved in crime and corruption, to be removed. 95% of the problem that we are facing in South Africa is an HR problem, having the wrong people in the wrong positions who have criminal motives, corrupt motives, incompetence, and records of poor performance. Thank you. Let me stop there.
All right. Thanks for that. Alex?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think just on the points that were made about the judiciary, I would not accept them. I think that the judiciary at this point in time remains independent, but it is clearly one of the arms of the state that is at risk of capture, political capture. We've seen that the police forces themselves, we've had senior members of crime intelligence who've gone and visited and partied with political parties and appear to be have a relationship, although that has been denied. But the problem has been in the past in that state investigative institutions like crime intelligence have not operated independently and become part of protecting key people and processes within the state. So we need independent institutions, and that is the key to basically making sure that our democracy operates in a decent manner going forward. But we have to have a focus on these structural features of the state. How people are nominated, appointed, and removed in the top positions drives what happens in the rest of the system. And South Africa is a case study of what happens when you don't have the right kind of arrangement in place.
All right. Thanks for that, Alex. Dr. Ndo?
Political parties, in my view, should take a lead in the fight against corruption, and they should be the ones who ensure that anyone who appears to be implicated in corruption or found to have been on the other side of corruption should be dealt with very harshly from political party level. In terms of the state, all cases that are related to corruption should not be delayed in terms of their processes, because in some instances, corruption cases take longer, and in the process, the evidence get diminished, and that creates a very, very big problem in the fight against corruption.
Let me thank all of my guests for weighing in on this conversation, and also to you as our listeners for participating in it. I think the general sense that I'm getting is that the conversation that we're having around corruption does need to be a lot more honest, and we do need to call out the fact that part of the failures around corruption and it being endemic is because it's not just endemic in our society, but it currently is also endemic in the governing party, which is why it becomes even harder to deal with, because the organization itself is struggling to deal with its members that are fingered in corruption. That's why we leave it for that particular conversation. On the other side of the 11 o'clock news, we'll be getting into a conversation looking at drug and substance abuse. Our insurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand, SMS out to 38462. Now that's good news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories, police launch a manhunt for suspects in Umlazi mass killing, and Ramaphosa speaks on government's fight against illegal mining. Good morning. Police in KwaZulu-Natal have launched a manhunt for suspects who allegedly shot and killed 5 people and injured 1 at different homes in the Uganda informal settlement in Umlazi in the south of Durban last night. Police say amongst the dead are 3 women and 2 men who sustained multiple gunshot wounds. The 32-year-old man who survived the attack was rushed to hospital. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson Robert Nechiunda.
When police arrived at the first house, the bodies of a 32-year-old man and a woman who was yet to be identified and believed to be in her early 30s were found with multiple gunshot wounds and were certified dead at the scene. At the second house, police found 2 bodies of women aged 30 and 38 years old as well as a body of a 24-year-old man. All three bodies had multiple gunshot wounds and also pronounced dead. The motive behind the shootings has not yet been established, and anyone with information regarding the killings and possible suspects is urged to contact the Umlaas police station or anonymously via the Crime Stop number 0800 10111 or through the MySAPS app.
In the Eastern Cape, police are investigating 4 murder cases and 1 for attempted murder following the shooting of 4 people in Gqeberha last night. Police spokesperson Priscilla Naidu says in the first incident, 1 person was injured. The victim was dropped by his friend at his house when he was approached by 2 suspects who opened his front door and allegedly shot him. He sustained bullet wounds to his arm and chest and was taken to hospital. Naidu says the suspects allegedly proceeded to another house in the same vicinity where 4 bodies were found with gunshot wounds.
Meanwhile, in a shack at the back of another house in Sekundla Street, the bodies of 4 people, 3 males and a female, aged between 19 and 24 years old, were found with gunshot wounds. In both incidents, the suspects were the same. The motive is yet to be established. The Provincial Serious and Violent Crimes Unit in Gqeberha are investigating a case of murder with 4 counts and attempted murder. Anyone who can assist us with any information relating to the suspects is asked to contact Detective Captain Monde Sitole.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says government's fight against illegal mining is yielding positive results. He addressed the matter in his weekly letter to the nation this morning. He says police have arrested 4,000 suspects for illegal mining-related crimes since last year. And in just 4 months this year, over 7,000 suspects involved in illegal mining were arrested for contravening immigration regulation. Ntebo Mukobo reports.
Government has vowed to intensify the fight against illegal mining, and President Ramaphosa has authorized the deployment of over 3,000 soldiers for 6 months to help the police in their operations, something Police Minister Bheki Cele says will help deal decisively with these armed illegal miners.
They resist and they are armed. So these operations is not just to arrest them when you see them. It's to go where they are and make sure that they are flushed out of the system of doing so.
The president says there are over 6,000 abandoned mines in South Africa. He has since congratulated police for their successes in dealing with these crimes.
Tourism Business Council of South Africa CEO Chifiwe Chibenga has again refuted claims that comedian Trevor Noah has received over 30 million rand for a new tourism advertisement. It's rumoured that Trevor Noah was paid 33 million rand to appear in a 5-minute advert featuring rhinos to promote the country. Chibenga says the amount cannot be disclosed as it's a private contractual matter.
It's a very small amount of money, that he charges. Actually, less than what he usually charges for the work that he does, for other countries. So it's a contractual matter. If we're going to say he charges X amount of money, the Swiss will come and say, well, but he did this for more money or less money. And remember, this is a private sector matter, and we are not using any state funds, so we are not duty-bound to report to Parliament or anybody else. The matter is between us and him.
And finally, a doctor at the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City says more than 30 babies need to be moved from the site to Egypt if they are going to survive because of the worsening conditions at the facility. The World Health Organization says the hospital is no longer functioning with a lack of power at the complex significantly increasing fatalities. Around 2,000 people are reportedly trapped there as Israel continues its campaign against Hamas, which it says has its headquarters underneath the building. The BBC's Tom Bateman reports.
Doctors at Al-Shifa Hospital say they fear the remaining 36 newborn babies needing intensive care treatment may die. Speaking to the BBC, the lead surgeon said they must have fuel to power the generators for incubators and to provide oxygen. Fighting is raging around the hospital. Evacuation routes are dangerous and bodies litter the road out, say aid groups. The Israeli army released a video of soldiers leaving 15 jerry cans of fuel on the side of a street for the hospital, but claimed Hamas stopped it being picked up. However, doctors say it wouldn't bring enough power for an hour, while any evacuation of babies needs specialised mobile incubators.
Recapping the top story, police in KwaZulu-Natal have launched a manhunt for suspects who allegedly shot and killed 5 people and injured 1 at different homes in the Ugandan formal settlement in Umlazi in the south of Durban last night. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.7 FM in Cape Town. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
It's been a long journey.
It's been a beautiful I'd say 20 years.
Yeah.
This is excluding years of study and lecturing.
Yeah.
Full of ups and downs, full of drama, full of front page headlining for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
We've actually survived the industry. Someone said, you work in a very ruthless, a very horrible industry. No, it's not. The industry is amazing.
Yeah.
It's the people.
David Lally, fashion designer and entrepreneur.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Don't wait for Black Friday to get access to great deals. SMS out to 38462 and ask Outsurance to give you a better deal on your car insurance. Ask them for 500 Rand cash if they can't beat what you're currently paying. Or a massive 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. That's out to 38462. That's a monthly saving on your premium or the cash promise. You've got nothing to lose. SMS out. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
If the one they have voted for is not performing, they must just go with an axe and solve the issue of corruption with an axe by voting. It's not like in the apartheid when they have to remove the apartheid by government by through process and fighting and guerrilla warfare and all that stuff. Right now, it's an easy thing to remove an unperforming, undisciplined government with an axe. That's a simple thing they must do.
Good morning, Cathy and listeners, Young and Rosebank in Cape Town. Cathy, I agree with your caller. President Ramaphosa has no moral standing, to speak about corruption. Now, people can say whatever they like, to vindicate Ramaphosa, but a sober person will know that act of tax evasion happened, in that transaction of Palapala. So unfortunately, if the head of the state really does not have, moral standing when it comes to corruption, we must just, accept, as a country that corruption in South Africa is the order of the day, unfortunately, Cathy.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point 11 after 11 o'clock. Welcome to the third and final hour of the show. So coming up in this hour, we're focusing on the the worrying increase, I must say, in the use of substance and drug abuse, in particular among young people. And some of the things that we're dealing with are not only underage pupils that are drinking alcohol, but we also have young children that are now coming up with different concoctions that include codeine, which is the cough mixture, alongside other drug concoctions, and they're being mixed with cough syrup and different substances to create a high. Young people getting high off of all of these different substances. Of course, it not only is a concern because of the health impact that it has, but the impact that it has on these young people, their behavior, how it affects families, and how more broadly it also affects our society. Let me welcome onto the show the Chief Director for Social Crime Prevention Program and Anti-Substance Abuse Program, Cathy Mohlahlana. Cathy, good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning. Good morning, Cathy.
Yes. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. All right. Let me also invite into this conversation Itumeleng Selepe. Itumeleng, good morning.
How are you, Cathy?
And Itumeleng, I'm well, thank you. Itumeleng is founder of Word on the Streets, and he's been advocating for a substance and drug-free society through that particular movement. And Sean Shelley is a researcher and chairperson of the South African Network of People Who Use Drugs. Sean, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for making time to speak to us this morning. Itumeleng, I want to begin with you because you are part of an organization that works specifically with people who are battling substance abuse, and you've been advocating around a society that is drug and substance abuse free. What is it that we're seeing that you, at least in as far as the work that you do is concerned, what's leading to this increasing level of addiction and substance abuse?
From what I'm seeing, as you were saying, the age is even getting younger. Like, I'm dealing with kids anywhere from 8 to 9 years. So this stuff is introduced in schools. They use it in order to fit in. They try things.
Itumeleng, I'm going to pause you there because it is important for us to hear you clearly. I'm going to ask that we just try and get him back on a clearer line. Sean, let me perhaps come to you and get you then to speak to the same question around what is really driving these addiction rates, substance abuse rates, including the fact that the users are becoming younger and younger, as Itumeleng pointed out.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that when you've got young children using drugs, it's essentially not a drug problem, but a society problem. It's a problem that we face in South Africa in particular. Post-94, with borders opening up, they become more porous. We also see a lot more people chasing the dream of wealth and prosperity. But unfortunately, we are a very inequitable society, the most inequitable in the world, and lack of opportunity, lack of economic empowerment, lack of resources, and lack of community integration, and a growing sense of psychosocial isolation and disconnection are known to be principal drivers of dependent drug use. So often you'll get people using drugs who don't suffer significant harms from it, then they'll usually grow out of that. But for people who are highly marginalized, who don't have much opportunity, or feeling isolated from society as a whole, so that could be any, extremely rich people perhaps, but more often than not, it's people who are marginalized in communities and already stigmatized. That makes drug use far more meaningful to them, and it becomes a solution rather than a problem. So I often say we don't have a drug problem in the country, we have a drug solution. When it comes to young kids, I think that the economic realities are that often parents are just unable to spend time with their children. You know, they leave home before the sun comes up and arrive home after dark just to try and make a living. Nobody can do more than what those parents are doing. But I think we've got a failure of society to look after young children. We've got no sports activities at schools. And, you know, kids are mimicking what they're hearing and what they're seeing from other people. They're also not aware of some of the dangers in some of the drugs they're using. You mentioned the cough mixture one, which is particularly dangerous, actually. It's large amounts of cough mixture which have codeine in them, and people don't realize that codeine is an opioid just like heroin is, or morphine. And so those kinds of things people need to be aware of, and need to be aware that taking large quantities of any drug is going to put them at significant risk.
Is it harder to work with young children who are abusing substances than with adults? And what do you find are some of the differences when dealing with both?
Okay, so first of all, when you're dealing with children, it's very seldom that you need to actually deal directly with the drug issue. You need to often deal with the circumstantial issues that surround that. So, for example, drug prevention with young children wouldn't be to tell young children about the dangers of myopia, perhaps, for instance. It would be more, and I'm talking about children in grades, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A better intervention, one that works well, is to build resilience in those children, to build senses of social connection. There are things called the good behavior game, for example, or strengthening families. These types of interventions, which focus on building healthy, good relationships, finding other meaning in life, tend to work really well and have long-lasting effects on children. With adults who are already dependent on drugs, that takes a slightly different approach, but there are lots of different approaches. The problem is that we've heavily relied on just insisting on abstinence from the start, but a lot of people can't cope with that. For a lot of people, you will find that their drug use is very protective. It has meaning to it. It ensures that they've got a social circle. It means that they can withstand the cold of living on the street, for example, and the hunger pangs. So to get them to stop, or to, just immediately without replacing it with anything else is not often achievable. I'm not saying it never happens, but often it doesn't. So often we need a stage-wise approach with them, and accept that it took a long time for people to learn to use drugs like in the way that they are. And in the same way, it's going to take some time to learn other things that can replace the drugs. And if you're not changing the environment significantly, you're often not going to solve the problem at all. You can, but usually it's very, very difficult. And dealing with adults, I think also, the one thing about adults is their brain has fully developed. So if they started using later, it's often easier to treat them then. And a lot of people, as soon as they find more meaning in life, get married, that kind of thing, will age out of their drug use. For those that don't, you've got to look at the circumstances they're in, or mental health issues that they might be having, and trying to self-medicate. But with children, their brains are very, very plastic. That means that they change very easily. And so young kids using drugs is never a good idea. There is some advantage, though, in that they can learn new things pretty quickly. But also things become really embedded with them. So they will always be vulnerable through their life if they started using really early in a dependent way.
All right. Thanks for that perspective, Sean. Itumeleng, I understand you're back on the line. Good morning again.
Yes, I'm back.
Yes, much better line. So you were telling us about some of the young children that you've been working with, what you've observed through your organization.
No, I'm saying it's getting younger and younger. So one thing I picked up with the younger kids is that they, as the gentleman was saying, they're mimicking the culture. So codeine is part of the Maji, like a huge hip hop culture. So that is something that they do in schools, and it's really easily accessible also. So yeah, that's one of the things.
When we say that they're mimicking the culture, which culture, Itumeleng?
It's a hip-hop culture, the rap culture.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's heavily taken by influential rappers like Lil Wayne and especially in South Africa. I can name a couple of them, but this is something that they're picking up and they've made it to look and sound cool.
But where do they see them? Where do they see them? Taking these mixtures. Like, is it? Because
in the videos. In the videos, on YouTube, it's quite. You can just Google it now, and half of this entertainment industry is there mixing with their Sprites and their codeines, and it's out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me bring in Caesar into this conversation. Caesar, from the perspective of the Department of Social Development, what have you been able to identify, and is there particular research that you have conducted looking into this issue of drug and substance abuse?
Yeah, first let me thank my colleagues for coming in, because they've covered and what they are saying, the areas that they are raising, it's things that we've also confirmed from our side. Yes, in terms of the research, we are funding Medical Research Council. They have been doing research for us as well as UCT in terms of, looking at what are the trends and and also looking at the quality of services that we are currently, rendering. And from their research, it definitely has confirmed that the age of children that have started drugging or experimenting has dropped, and we have more young people that are addicted to substances, and as well as many other social issues that causes them. For instance, issues of families are quite critical. Families are under distress. Families are unable to really contain the members of families or provide that support that is needed. Hence, there are all these social ills that we see that families are contending with.
So when you plan intervention programs from the department, what do you aim to target, and how do those programs run?
Okay, since we are part of the global community, we've looked at those international standards, because remember, we're not the only country that is struggling with issues of substance abuse. There are many other countries, neighbors, and the whole global community at large. And we are learning from those countries, and we are also benchmarking with a number of them in terms of how they've crafted their messaging as well as the interventions. One of the things that we are considering when we are planning the interventions is the issue of evidence-based. There is a lot of emphasis to say one of the reasons why some of our interventions are not working as a country and as a collective, not only government, I'm talking about the entire sector, is the fact that some of the programs that we are implementing are not evidence-based. There is no science to it. People have done it because they believe that it's working, but you cannot really go back to it and confirm indeed if it is working or not. So there is an emphasis to say the programs that we are implementing must be evidence-based. And one of them is the issues of children, to say we can't lump them in one group because they are at different ages, and as Sean has said about the cognitive development and the brain, so we need to consider those things when we package those messages. So we are informed by research. There's no way we can come up with programs for substance abuse that are not informed by research, because it's just not going to work.
Sean, let's talk about this issue of culture, because I think it's an important issue which Itumeleng has raised, that young people are seeing this, in music videos, on social media, and part of why they're being lured into this behavior is as a result of what they see as the predominant or main culture or the cool culture that they need to be part of.
Yes, and I would agree with the statement. I mean, we know several rappers in the US have died, such as Pimp C, for example. There were a couple of others who died from what they call purple drank or scissor or lean. Those are all the same thing. And I'm sure you know the story as
Sean,
well.
It's called what?
It's called purple drank.
Okay.
lean and scissor up. Look, we reported this for the first time in 2013 in the Western Cape. And we wrote a report on it where we were seeing kids literally falling over at school, and they take things like codeine-based cough mixture, and they mix it with Sprite or some other cool drink. And in fact, other guests will probably have a more up-to-date version than I have, because I'm not working in schools at the moment directly, but I keep up to date with it. And then they drink it like that, and they're getting it across the counter, and we would find bottles and bottles of empty bottles of cough mixture lying in the fields near the pharmacies and that. Yeah.
How does one even begin to manage? I don't want to say police this kind of thing, but given the fact that it's also happening in schools, and you've got young children in schools that are using these concoctions, what approach do you think school authorities should have to this issue?
Who must answer?
So sorry, Sean, you can start first. I'll come to you, Dumeling, in a moment. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I was giving my co-speakers a chance there. But yes, so really what you've got to do is, first of all, there is a thing called the Codeine Initiative, which pharmacists are supposed to keep an eye on all codeine medications and report on it. That often doesn't happen. We see sort of unregulated sales of codeine to young people, because young people shouldn't be able to go into a chemist and just buy codeine-based medications at all. And there are sort of restrictions in place on that, but those are obviously becoming redundant now as people find other ways of accessing these things. But I think the most important thing is, when you start seeing changes in young children's behavior, is to monitor that and to really get to understand what's going on in their life and why this is becoming something they want to do. They're often just aspirational. There's difficulty with finding right supervision, and that the last thing we should be doing is suspending children from school, because as soon as you suspend a child from school, they then got nothing to do during the day. In most cases, parents are at work, and they then start interacting with much older children who are using other drugs as well. The reason why this drink is so dangerous, in particular in the United States, is they have another ingredient in the United States as well, which is in upper, and so you've got a sort of form of amphetamine mixed in with the codeine, which is particularly dangerous. But here, I don't want to minimize it. Here, it's pretty dangerous as well. You take enough codeine, you're going to stop breathing, and that's the problem that we face, especially with kids who are much smaller and have much stronger responses to these types of drugs. But yeah, what you need is programs that concentrate on things like sport, alternatives, finding alternative meanings, strengthening social circles, and also just making it not cool to follow these rappers who are literally dying, some of them.
Sure, yeah, really, really concerning. We'll continue the conversation in a moment, and Itumeleng, I'll give you an opportunity to tell us sort of what you have been seeing in terms of the ingredients of the mixing of these concoctions, and most importantly, I think, what it is that communities need to be able to do differently, what we need to be doing differently in this moment, so that we're also able to reach those young children before it affects the entire course or trajectory of their lives. It's 11:30. It's time for the latest news headlines.
Good morning. In the headlines, police in KwaZulu-Natal have launched a manhunt for suspects who allegedly shot and killed 5 people and injured 1 at 3 different houses in the Ugandan formal settlement in Umlazi in the south of Durban last night. In the Eastern Cape, police are investigating 4 murder cases and 1 for attempted murder following the shooting of 4 people in Gqeberha last night. Police spokesperson Priscilla Naidu says in the first incident 1 person was injured. And the chairperson of the Southern African Agri Initiative, Theo de Jager, says farmers are angered by the gazetting of export regulations in the Government Gazette. This comes after City Press newspaper reported that South African farms deemed too white can no longer export their produce to the UK and the EU. I'll have details on these and other stories at 12.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to the Talking Point. Of course, I'll also take your calls and text messages and voice notes contributing to this conversation. You can dial in on 08600. Let me try that again. 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032, and on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. Anonymous from Heidedal in Bloemfontein says, good morning, Cathy. In my area, I'm living in a so-called colored community. There's a doctor who sells medication without prescription. Now, these kids are able to access such pills and use it for smoking. And the other thing is that you must pay for it cash and not debit. If you use bank cards, he charges you 10% more. It's bad here. Kids don't go to school and are wandering the streets. So that's just one perspective from a listener. Itumeleng, what are you seeing in schools when it comes to the use of these substances?
What I'm seeing is this is they're all in competition. I mean, the other day I caught these two. They were smoking a bubbly, but the water is gin, and inside where they put the flavored tobacco was really mixed with crystal. I don't think you can fathom what that is doing to their body. So you finding these things are easily accessible. It's like buying bread now. It's like every corner, everywhere. This is where, and it's getting out of hand. I mean, I'm talking about myself. I'm not only an activist, but I used to be a user. I'm talking about 16 years of pure everyday usage. And we are here, but people aren't using us. If I had somebody tell me when I was in grade 8 that this is where I will end up, 90% of the chance, yes, I would have tried something, but I would have just taken a different road. And then the communities also don't know where to go. So I'm in Limpopo right now, and I'm the only person actually who people reach out to when the child starts acting funny, starts stealing money, starts being a bully, the marks are dropping, and already I can see the trends are the same. It's the same trend.
What do the children say to you, Itumeleng, about why they're using?
So to fit in is one of the things. The peer pressure is also home environment. I've noticed that a certain parent figure, if they're not around, especially with the boys, if they don't have a father figure, it really deeply affects them. And just different communities that we live in. The poorer communities actually are the ones that consume more. But yeah, that's what most of the kids tell me.
And where do they say they're getting the money from? I understand what you're saying in terms of, as an addiction develops, you'll notice change of behavior that might even result in stealing of money or different things from the home to go and sell it. But initially, where are they getting the money to do it from?
Yeah, stealing, shoplifting. Addiction is such a phenomenally weird thing. You do everything. If you're a girl, you're selling your body. If you're a boy, you're stealing at ShopRite. You pickpocketing people. There's so many ways to do it. You're selling scrap metal. It's about getting the drug at the end. But, yeah.
Caesar, I'm thinking about how it's very difficult to solve a problem like this without involving families. And Itumeleng is saying that a lot of these young users are actually turning to drugs because of their family situations, because of their family structures.
Yes. If I may come in. I was looking at, the target groups, the unusual target groups that we need to start working with them in order for us to make inroads and difference. One is the parents to say there is no way we can win this battle without really getting parents involved, because it's very important that parents are capacitated on this matter, so that whatever the messaging that kids are exposed to, for instance, maybe at school they're talking about drugs, they also get it from their parents, and parents won't be able to do that if they're not capacitated. So there must be a special focus on parents, and if it means we adapt our programs to at the time that suits parents, we need to do it, because parents are working, they're not available during working hours. So it means we'll have to work, differently in order for us to access parents. The other group that is important is the very same teachers, because kids spend a lot of time in schools. It's important that, the issue of drugs is not a by the way issue, but it's quite critical. It becomes core of what they are taught, because if they are addicted, there's no way at the end of the day that they can have good marks. So those are some of the key departments that we are working on, as well as departments like arts and culture and sports. They used to have programs that are called sports against drugs. So we need to bring back those programs that used to work and make sure that kids, they are involved in schools beyond the school. Lastly is the issue of at the community level. We've got faith-based faith churches. A lot of people, they go to churches whether they are addicted or not. South Africa is highly religious, so it's very important that we work with the religious sector, so that they do not stigmatize people that are addicted, but rather they must embrace and be able to facilitate, a rehabilitation and so on, as well as the traditional leaders. So all the critical stakeholders that were left behind, they need to be brought on board, so that they are able to buy in, and we all sell the same messages.
All right. I want to take these voice notes that have come through from our listeners, and a lot of them are really around, having children that are struggling with drug and substance abuse.
Hello, Sis Cathy. I'm struggling. I need help. I need help on my son. He's on these drugs, and I need help. I need help. I'm trying. Also, him is trying, but after some days, he go back. I'm trying. I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do. Please, if there's any organization who can help my son, I don't know. I've tried to go to what they call social workers, that maybe they can take him to rehab, but they're telling me that he must allow it to happen. If he don't allow it, it can't happen. We cannot force him to rehab. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Please, if there's an organization or anybody who can help me, please help me. Cathy.
Hi, Cathy. I'm wanting to comment regarding drugs and especially amongst young people. So my daughter was born in 1994, but the year she turned 10, I had to reevaluate what is important to me, because I worked with a colleague and we traveled a lot for work purposes, so we weren't home much, workshops, conferences, etc. Whose son stole her car while she was at a conference, and she later confessed that he's on drugs. So I made the decision that I changed my job to be present at home. My sister is now struggling with a 16-year-old son, and I said to her, she can be thankful that she was saved by COVID by 3 years because she was home, she was present. But currently, she needs to be more active, even if she just takes him out on a Saturday and just make the day about him or something. But that is the route to go. And it's hard and it's difficult as a working parent, especially if you're single.
Yeah, and it's come up quite a lot in this conversation, the presence of parents and families. Itumeleng, what advice would you have to both of these parents, especially given that they're both dealing with this issue coming through from multiple sides of the family?
So I would love to give them my number. There's certain things, language amongst addicts and recovering addicts, that we actually open up to each other easier. So you might find the dad, he's having a problem with the son, but what keeps making him go back? So that's what I was talking about. Like, user, I am here. I'm willing to leave my number, and people can call and I can assist. But yeah, that's one of the advice I can give them.
All right. Itumeleng, you can go ahead and share your number or a contact detail for where listeners can get in touch with you.
Okay, so it's 067 6630 705. So it's 067 6630 705.
All right. Thanks for that, Itumeleng. Sean?
Yes. So it's really difficult when your child is using drugs. You can become very fearful. You think of all these self-fulfilling prophecies about what's going to happen to them and that. My advice to parents, and this again, it's age dependent. If you're talking about really young kids, you really have to look at the environment that they're in and what sort of levels of supervision are. But if you're talking about older kids, often teenagers are naturally, by the stage of development, they're rebellious. They are going to experiment. My number one advice to parents is make sure that you spend some time each week just listening to them, not telling them what to do, but listening to them, making them feel that no matter what they bring to you, they will still be loved, they will still be cared for, which is difficult when you're fearful. You just want to save your kid, but by exploding, getting angry, you're going to trace them away further. You're going to make them feel unheard. So listen to them. Listening is much more important than telling. That's the one thing. The other thing is that if they are using, speak to them about that and ask them what it is. I think a very important thing is, and the organization that I founded, Sanpud, they spend a lot of time working with active drug users. And the problem is that people think that when they're an active drug user, they can't change their behaviors, that they're entitled in some way because of the drugs to do things that are not right. So my message always is, just because you are using drugs does not mean that you are entitled to steal from your family, steal from friends and that. And that's a very important message, because people kind of think, oh, well, everybody's labeling me a drug addict, therefore I must, it's okay to steal. They expect me to steal. It's not okay to steal, So behavior change can start before drug use stops. And often when behavior change starts, then people start responding differently to them. The environment changes and they find that they reduce their drug use.
We're going to have to leave it there for this morning. Sean Shelley, Itumeleng Selepe, and Caesar Marangwe, thank you all for your contributions to this conversation. This is where I leave it for this morning. Up next is the book reading.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker account and earn the best rates in the market, more than the top 10 money market funds' average returns. Enjoy unmatched advantages at an interest rate of 8.9% per annum. Plus, if you open your account today, you could win your share of 15 million rand in luxury travel experiences for two. Yes, you heard right. A trip for you and your partner. My bank does that. Open yours today in less than 5 minutes on the banking app, at your nearest Absa branch, or consult your private banker or call 0860 111 515. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Tune in for a conversation on diabetes on Afternoon Express. We're joined by physician and endocrinologist Dr. Jocelyn Hennig to unpack the common symptoms and risk factors of this disease. Plus, we look at how to manage diabetes through lifestyle choices with dietitian Cathy Mohlahlana. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
SFM invites you to our inaugural public lecture, delivered by the former Chief Justice, Mogoeng. The theme of the lecture is constitutionalism and upholding the rule of law in South Africa. Has corruption and malfeasance eroded the moral fabric of the democratic dispensation?
The lecture will take place on the 29th of November 2023 at the SABC M1 Studios in Johannesburg. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
The book reading. Please note the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SFM presents another episode of Simply Larry, read by Simpiwe Nkosi, written by Elias Masilela.
Part 1. Unveiling Greatness. Chapter 1. Opening. This book is a humble yet duty-driven exercise that was preceded by many torturous years of debating amongst the Salesian old boys of Manzini about the need to capture the history and the role of the Salesians in Manzini, Swaziland, in particular that of Father Larry McDonnell. This was not a result of simple intellectual fervor, but rather an impassioned need to immortalize the relationship that these boys, now men, enjoyed with the school and its headmaster of amazingly many years, as well as with the wider Salesian and Roman Catholic community in Manzini for over 6 decades and a half. To many, it became a lifetime relationship. Both the school and Larry continue to influence their lives to this very day. It took a few uncomfortable years of contemplation on my part before I capitulated to the duty. Since my completing of Form 5, Grade 12, in 1981, I had carried a deep sense of guilt and debt towards the Salesians of Manzini. Most importantly, this debt was towards Fathers Larry and Ahern. These two priests were my proverbial white knights in shining armor in 1981, for saving my academic career. This was when they risked their fiduciary responsibilities of running the school, according to rules set out in London. On this occasion, they broke these rules to ensure that I could write my exams under extremely unusual circumstances. This was because of an arrest that coincided with my Form 5 O-level examinations. I faced an abyss, only to be saved by Father Larry McDonnell, who went out of his way to ensure that I wrote the exams despite being virtually behind bars. This experience is not unique. There are many such daring interventions that these priests effected in the lives of many boys, as we shall learn in Part 3 of this book. Thinking back to many of the lessons that trickled down to us is one principle that Father Ahern drummed into our heads, to a point where it became second nature. This was the principle of difficult right and easy wrong. It was a lesson that life is about two choices. They, as our guardians, would never force any particular choice on us, but they had and would always uphold the moral obligation